We got Jenny from the block here. Ooh, ooh. I am so relieved and grateful that you're here. I just feel like already, I feel more relaxed already with you coming in here. Yes. Love it. I feel like there should be, I don't think, is there a doctor in the house? Fuck that. Is there a life coach in the house? Is there someone to come in and I feel like every time you come on, it's like, Ayanla, fix my life. Like, let's get it together.
Thank you.
Oh, speaking of, there's someone that I think needs your help. Who needs you to fix her life. Her name is Tessica Brown.
Uh-huh.
There's also a PSA. Miss Tessica Brown down in Louisiana. Maybe y'all have heard about this. She sprayed her hair. She ran out of Got To Be hairspray, which been there back when I used to use Got To Be, but now I switched over to Shea Moisture because I only like to use products that are FUBU, for us, by us. She sprayed her hair with Gorilla Glue, and her hair does not move. She has tried washing her hair like 17 times. Like, I think she had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay. Her hair, let me tell you this. Her hair looks good, though. It looks cute.
If you're going to have a protective style, she had it. She did have it.
It does. Like, when you look at it, it looks like she's ready to go. Like, she wakes up ready to go. So I guess there's a plus side to this. Like, you don't have to wait, oh, I got to get ready for work. Like, she just, whoop, she's ready.
Yeah, I thought she was going to grow it out for like several months or something. Because I was like, oh, you're good, though. It's good. It's a problem eventually, but yeah. But here, okay, so in her defense, there's two things. Okay, so first of all, so you tell me what Got To Be was. I thought, is it hairspray or is it like wig spray? I thought it was like that edges that you spray like on your stocking cap to stick wigs on. Is it not?
Well, at least, I mean, I know there's a Got To Be, like, it's a product, and they got hair gels, like, it's like their signatures that it's like glue, like it's like
it's a glue.
Hair, it's like a glue, yeah.
Okay, so I think what it's really used for is like what you spray on the edges of your wig stocking cap so that your wig stays on, right, and it doesn't rip your edges. So I don't think like even you shouldn't put a ton on your hair, but it also could just be like hairspray so that it doesn't move. Okay, fine. There's also a product called Gorilla Sanat that is a gel. It's like a green goo that is also, so that you don't have a hair out of place. So in her defense, there could have been some confusion there. I wouldn't want to put anything called snot in my hair, but also there's like crazy glue and super glue, but like Gorilla Glue is like the strongest of the strong. We've like built structures in our home just based off of Gorilla Glue.
That's what it's there for. It is literally there for. And the people of Gorilla Glue, because she's, first of all, this has actually been her moment, like her skyrocketing to fame. She's now got the blue check mark. She's been verified on social media over this. Her followers has like blown up. People are just like, I have a colleague who's like tuning in every day to figure out like what is up, what's the new development. Like it's only funny because she's like, okay, right? Like, she didn't like her hair didn't like fall out.
She genuinely cared. She wasn't like Gorilla Glue challenge. She was like, I was just trying to have a protective style for the week and I overshot.
I went too far. I guess Chance the Rapper saw when it was happening, and she was like, hey everybody, I'm using this, and she was like, a spray, and Chance the Rapper was like, clutching his pearls. He's like, this is not going to end well, and it's in it. And the good people of Gorilla Glue have even reached out to her through social media. They're like, we're here to help if we can. Like,
here's some solutions.
Try washing your hair with this, and
she's tried. You guys have an impeccable product. Thank you.
Oh my gosh! But
I heard that she made it to the hospital, so hopefully she's
doing fine. But a PSA, y'all, do not use Gorilla Glue for the hair. It is not what it's for. I'm not. Maybe this is like pandemic brain. Maybe she's got Ponda replay brain. She's got the pandemic brain. And, forces you to go there.
But bless her too for just, letting us, she PSA'd first. She was like, listen, don't do it. She didn't hide. She wasn't like, I'm not going to tell nobody. She was like, I'm going to put it out there. And, she wasn't like, I'm going to wait till I get over this journey. She's like, I'm going to take you on the ride. This is what happened on Wednesday, 17 washes later. I'm still this way, and so.
Still here. Well, Tessica, enjoy that blue check mark. But you know what? Fair warning to Miss Tessica. Fame is not all that it's cracked up to be. I watched this last because I wasn't, it's Black History Month and I'm trying to, my Black History Month challenge. I'm trying to take in as much, Black media as I can. I did it, but I got this weak spot for Britney Spears, and there's the new documentary, New York Times documentary. So just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Yes. New York Times documentary called Framing Britney Spears. Every so once in a while, they put out a little documentary on FX Hulu. This, because I, have been following the whole entire, the hashtag Free Britney, all of the stuff I have been following. We've covered it here on the podcast, and just, just her journey. We talked about, before when she wanted to release her album Doll Domination, or was it? No, Original Doll. And the record company was like, you're not releasing this. And all these just sort of control things that were happening. Anyways, the documentary, highly recommend it. And I'm someone, and here's the thing. I feel like I thought I knew everything. I was blown away during this documentary.
And it's also to say what you learned, or no? You gotta watch.
Yes, I'm going to point this out because I think it's a warning. This is another PSA. This is Minority Corner. It's just a PSA episode today. We have so many warnings, y'all, because to look back at what happened 20 years ago with 2021 goggles. We have changed. Our perspectives have changed, and it's so fucking cringeworthy. The questions that she used to get asked. Apologies all around. Diane Sawyer, first up to the plate. Come here, Diane. Diane.
You're calling people up too.
Oh yes, you are. Report for an apology, Diane, to Miss Britney Spears. And it still goes back to what Chris Crocker asked us decades ago, crying, "Leave Britney alone." The girl got harassed for decades. Diane Sawyer, right after Justin Timberlake broke up. And she's like, you hurt him. What did you do that was so bad that you... And this is a fucking Diane Sawyer, right? Don't you need to go, figure out what's going on in Iraq? Don't you need to go do some, actual journalism, Diane Sawyer?
Yeah.
Inappropriate questions.
I'm asking what the people want to know. That's what they always say.
To, a 20-year-old girl who had, a breakup and maybe there was... But maybe there was an infidelity or whatever. It doesn't matter. That's really none of our fucking business.
No, it's not.
They're kids. They're fucking kids, right? And then
I sing, I dance. That's your business about my business. That's it.
And she was so kind. You see how so kind she was, but she also ends up breaking down in interviews after interviews where people are asking are you still a virgin? None of our business. She's 17, 18 years. None of our business.
None.
And it's so weird because I remember some of these interviews and these questions and they were obsessed about her boob size. She had a boob job. And it's interesting because at the time, I mean, I was a kid too. But this is how deep the patriarchy is. It reminds me very similar to racism, right? And I equate both of them to being like a fish in water. Fish don't realize they're swimming in water, right? They don't know that.
Ask a fish what water feels like. Yeah.
Yes, and like that's the same thing as that. Like we're all been swimming around in this racism, patriarchy water, and now that I'm kind of stepping out, right? I'm like, a merman, or like I'm getting legs. I'm walking onto the beach, and I'm looking back and I'm like, oh, that water smells like patriarchy. It is so nasty. Like the questions are just like, there was a governor of Maryland who was like, I'm a shoot Britney Spears. Like a governor of Britney Spears, the first lady of Maryland, was like, I could shoot her because of the way that she's dressing. Like people were harassing her because of the way that she dresses, and they were like, oh, you're so sexualized. Y'all sexualized her.
Yeah,
Y'all did
like
that.
totally. And, you know, I mean, I remember watching some video kind of not recently, but somewhat recently where it was like only shots of just like her stomach and her low rise jeans and that's it. I was like, that's all this video is really about. Like, if that was me in the same video, it would not have worked. It just wouldn't, you know, it was all about that. Like, if her
and she wasn't the cinematographer, right?
She wasn't the cinematographer, she wasn't the wardrobe stylist.
No.
Market, none of it, you know.
And I think like everyone
willing, but she did it, and
yes.
so it's like, so celebrate the work, you know.
Right.
Like because
but
then her downfall was like, oh, so she was the sweetheart until she wasn't, and then who's there now, you know.
And like, but even like if you think about it, like they pushed her to that point. How much can someone deal with when they're asking, like, you know, and what's wrong with like her? I mean, her owning her, she wants to own her, like, you know, like sexual nature, but then we're gonna like shame her to do it. And then the questions that people were asking her, like Ed McMahon, when she was 10 years old at Star Search, was like, yes, oh God, he's like, do you have a boyfriend? And like on the stage of Star Search, this girl just got done singing. Can we ask her about like, how long have you been singing? Who are your idols? Do you have a boyfriend? That's all. He didn't ask the little boy standing next to her. Yeah. Or does he have a girlfriend? Like, no, like, and then he was like, and then it gets even, he's like, could I be your boyfriend?
You see what I'm saying?
It's so gross. And it's so weird because like at the time, I don't think anybody batted a fucking, I mean, majority of people didn't bat an eyelash. We were so conditioned to that world and to the society of that. And it's just like, it's no wonder, you know, and she, you know, had her, we weren't talking about mental health back then. She had a fucking mental health. And then it comes out around the time when she had shaved her head and the situation with the umbrella, she was suffering from postpartum depression, right? And so no one was like, oh wow, she needs help. People were, or you know, they were like, that she was a joke, she was a punchline.
Or
like,
I mean, to
everyone
call someone crazy, you know, like she's crazy, but it's like,
right.
well, what led up to that, and how are you even treating this incident? Like, of course. That's when I was like, the public ain't no good, you know?
No,
like,
yeah.
She's such a darling, you know? And so the minute it's just like, it's clearly a breakdown, you know? And all you can do is poke fun of her. I was like, man. And
like, yeah. And it's so interesting because like they interview one of the paparazzis and you saw like a shot of Britney would be like $1 million. So now there's money on the line, right? And like, and the media was obsessed with her for like, their entire career, like everything about her. I remember there were times when she didn't even have an album out for like a year, and yet she was on the cover of every Us Weekly People for that like entire time. And he was like, oh well, you know, at the time he was the reporter that like the paparazzi who she just shaved her head. She had no custody of her kids. She just wanted to see her kids. All Britney wanted to do was be a mom, right? Yeah. And he like Kevin Federline didn't let her see her kids or whatnot. And the paparazzi goes up to her. He's like, well, I just wanted to ask her a few questions. That's not your job. Are you a journalist? I mean,
the paparazzi thing is already very, that could be a whole episode. Yeah.
And at the same time though, you're not Diane Sawyer, but also fuck Diane Sawyer. Yes, that is. Ain't no journalist either. I want her credentials. I move over Jennifer Hudson. I have a new feud, and it is with Diane Sawyer. Out for Venom. So,
but that still happens. There's like so many compilations of like ScarJo, Scarlett Johansson, only being asked about like her underwear and like how she got in shape for Black Widow. You know, it's just, and it does feel oppressive. You know, like watching it, it's like, God, you know, as a woman, you know, you're just like, does it matter? Like, why have a brain? Nobody cares, you know, like it definitely feels oppressive, you know?
Yeah. And I definitely recommend this documentary because, you know, we're all were affected by, whether you were a fan of Britney. The reign of Britney, we all were affected by it, and it's so tragic when you look at it. And also, it's a blessing that like this woman is even still alive, because it didn't even get into the actual whole entire thing. Is that her dad is her conservator, and they were going to this thing where like, you know, never in California, no one's ever gotten out of a conservatorship, and a conservatorship is usually for someone who's like incapable of being able to take care of their own self or their own finances. And she, at that time when she was at this low point, she got swooped into this conservatorship, but she's also a business. And there's people who are profiting so much off of like her just, going out there. And like, it's like, but she can go out on stage, she can do these different like TV shows or movies or these different like, branding deals, but she can't take care of herself. What's the line here? Right.
Yeah.
And so like she can't even go to Target and like, buy an ice cream cone without, she has like no agency of herself. And so for a woman to also be controlled like that in 2021. So it's all really sketchy. We'll watch the documentary. Like her dad came back out of nowhere. And like one woman says that only thing she ever heard from her when Britney first hit it, like all the dad said was, she gonna be real rich and be able to buy me a boat. And that she's like, that on that. She'll leave. She's like, I'll leave that at that. So I wonder like, who is this happening to now? Like, who are we? Because we as consumers of media can be like vultures. And I think like if Britney had Instagram, which people are also like, her Instagram is leaving coded accounts because she'll like wear certain colors and like, we asked her to wear that color, or like she's like and recently after the documentary was released, because the whole entire hashtag Free Britney moment, this thing is like, she's leaving messages in Instagram that she wants to be free, and in the documentary after the documentary was released, she goes, now I know this past weekend the documentary was released this past weekend, and the Super Bowl happened this weekend, and she goes, I know this past weekend there was a moment that we were all waiting for that finally happened. The Super Bowl. Now, I was going for the Chiefs and I was always going for the other team too, but I don't know who I wanted to win. And people are like, she's trolling us, like she knows, like, because it's like, is she legally can she say anything? No one's ever really heard her talk about the conservatorship, so
man,
no one really knows like how she's really feeling about it. And like her videos on Instagram are sometimes kind of suspect. Like she does not look like a woman who is well or a woman who is like free.
Ooh, yeah, I don't know. We got to get people like on Reddit on it or something so that they can like hack the net.
Okay, here's the other thing that it made me think though too, because the hashtag Free Britney people, they show up to the courthouse, there's protests, and they're like, some of them got into the courthouse and they were doing like a live Google Doc, like typing the notes of like what was happening, so then people outside could know what was happening and they could read it out loud. Oh, wow. And one of them, they were like, but what happens if like this isn't real, like, or like you're making this up? And it reminded me of like, it's like, it could be like, what if this is like QAnon essentially, where it's just this like online conspiracy, and because you want to believe something, you're believing it's true. And so
welcome to the internet.
And just like, I mean, luckily they've been peacefully protesting, but we've seen that it can go, and then they're like, sometimes it's like a Rorschach test. You see what you want to see, right? Like they're like, oh, she wore yellow, we told her to wear yellow, she's in trouble. Like,
that's deep. So it's very inconclusive.
Yeah, and I think my friend Dave Holmes, former MTV VJ, and I can say that because I've been on his podcast a few times, he said, we may never know, like, people read what they want to read into the whole entire hashtag Free Britney movement thing. But the thing is, like, we never really knew her, right? We never really knew her. So you can't really think that you're going to know her from, these different posts. And if, it's time for her to tell her story, she will tell it. So all we can do is really just sort of wait and support, but also like make sure we don't do the same vulturistic things to other people. Call out patriarchy when it's being patriarchy, call out sexism when it's being sexism. Let women, be whatever they want to be,
and
whatever that is, and not, shame people for that. And like, so it's like, leave Britney alone. We're just gonna go back to that.
I mean, totally. Yeah, shout out to Chris Crocker.
He had it right all along. Okay, so I'm so sad. Well, it looks like your favorite show this year, the Golden Globe nominations came out, and your favorite, Bridgerton, wasn't nominated.
Wasn't even up for it this year. It's so new. But
maybe it couldn't be. Oh, so for next year.
Oh, everybody loves Bridgerton, and I just have to go on record to say, I feel like I hate it, actually.
Whoa! I've never heard you say that before for any sort of media. You'll just be like, oh, I didn't like it, or it's not really for me. Hate it.
I just feel like, because now it's everywhere, and I gave it a try. I did that thing where, like, how 2-year-olds will, like, stand up and watch TV and, like, look at it. Like, I was trying to, like, meal prep and watch it, and I was like, I think this isn't good. I was like, let me see. And so I just was, like, standing, like, wow me, give me. It's not, nope. And then I waited for my husband to get home. And I was like, watch this. Like, this is going to make it fun. Because sometimes, you know, when you watch it together and comment, we were mad.
How many episodes did you get through?
Not since Cobra Kai have I been so mad.
Oh, people love Cobra Kai. They're going to come after us today. They're going to come after us today on the Twitter. Separate our, the views of each guest co-host are not representative of Minority Corner.
Do you love Cobra Kai? Oh my God,
I've never seen it. I've never seen it, and I'm probably not going to, mainly because, like, I don't know.
You love the Karate Kid? Because I loved.
I didn't. I'm not. Growing up, I'm only interested in like I only like ladies who kick. And so I probably would have signed up for like the third one with Hilary Swank. Wasn't she the third Karate Kid?
Yeah.
But I didn't even see that because I just didn't really care. Like yeah, but I know Cobra Kai has ladies who kick, so you would think I would be all for it, but I just. No. It looks a little too CW for me, which I'm not above. Like, I love Arrow and all that sort of stuff, or used to.
Speaking of CW, back to Bridgerton, because that's what my hub said that it was like. He's like, it's very CW. I was like, oh, is it?
Uh-oh. It's a Shonda. I thought I would love it because it's Shonda Rhimes. And I'm here for anything that she does. This is how I watched it 3 times, episode 1 even, because it said Shondaland. I was like, I live in Shondaland. I have property. I own property in Shondaland.
She owns it's like, okay, where to begin? So Shondaland, check. I was like, I'm in. It looks beautiful, like costuming. I was like, that's fun, because people will be like, I don't hear about a period piece, but I would say I don't either, but I love a good story, like Game of Thrones got me on episode 1. So if it's a good story, you do like it. Mm-hmm. It was all about diversity. They said there's gonna be so much diversity. So I was like, awesome, can't wait. Oh, okay. I don't know if I got to episode 2 or 3, but it shouldn't take that long, and I'm not in, and I'm angry, about it. I feel like the diversity aspect was kind of like a bait and switch. I feel like people were plopped in, but it didn't feel truly diverse on a lot of different levels. Even just like, okay, so there's like 2 girls that are best friends. Like, I thought they were going to have them be in love, but they're just friends, which could be fine.
That's what I'm finding too. I haven't seen my queer representation that I'm really looking for. And I think it's been my Saturday morning make pancake show. And so I'm the same way, like, I'm making pancakes and like watching it. I'm about 3 episodes in too. I'm glad it exists. And I'm glad it exists. I do think that Shonda Rhimes is a very horny woman, which I think is great. I'm not shaming. I mean, hello. We just got off of like a lot of sex happening in that show.
I haven't gotten to it. I feel like maybe it comes later.
No, I'm in the same episode as you. I feel like I felt like it's a very horny period piece is what I have experienced. Maybe you were cutting carrots at that time.
Maybe. But I know there was like a brother giving it to someone up against a tree.
See? Yeah.
I mean, but it's a throwaway character. It's like, what's the character? Okay, character development. That's one thing. It's like, what's the character development? We don't know who it was up against the tree. So it's just that he was late and he's horny. Okay, great. And then there's the opera singer. But I don't know. Okay, but character development. Okay, so the conflict is like, there's the Duke and then there's the main girl, right? And it's like, first they don't like each other, but then they come up with this plan.
And you know where it's going, that they're eventually you're going to be rooting for them to like be together, but then they're not going to be able to be together. And it's going to be seasons and seasons of this.
Right. So that's one thing where it's like, you know what it's going to be, which I don't mind if it all unfolds well. But the thing was like, he doesn't want to get married. And she does or something. I just feel like whatever the central conflict was, where it's like, I don't want to get married, so if we act like we're together, then you get what you want and I get what I want. But then all of a sudden you can tell an attraction starting. But then my point is, but then that solves everything if there's an attraction, because then they're together and they like each other. And so it's
You
like,
gotta get
what
to
do you?
season 3. I mean, not season 3, episode 3, and he calls it off. He calls it off. So, there's a wrench in it because he's got to let her get married because otherwise she's going to be the old fuddy-duddy of town. And then it's the whole entire, like, but who's Lady Whistlebottom? Like, so there's the whole entire, like, who's the Gossip Girl? It's essentially like Gossip Girl meets, like, a period piece.
See,
like,
and that's what
essentially.
I heard later, and I never saw Gossip Girl. The other
Me
thing
neither.
was that there was like the girl that came, like the cousin, and she was a woman of color. You know, her, and I felt like the way whatever the scandal was, that why she was there, which you find out eventually, they spelled it out so much. First of all, I was like, I wanted her to be pregnant by the dad of the house that she came to, and that's why she had to go there. So I was like, that would have been a cooler storyline, but it's already a written story. But then also they kind of like said how it came, and you're like putting it together, but then they like show you a scene of them like forging the signature, and I just felt like it was too spoon fed, and I was like, this is not Shonda. Like, it was, you know, like I need flow charts for How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal.
She's doing something a lot simpler.
So
it's so interesting. It's so interesting because a lot of what people have been saying is that they've appreciated that, because Shonda and Ryan Murphy both had Netflix deals, and Ryan Murphy has been pumping out like so many shows on Netflix, right? But they haven't been like the hits that he's had in the past with like, you know, a Glee or a Nip Tuck or American Horror Story. These ones that are just like taken over, you know, the landscape. And it's part of what people are saying is that like they've been just so rushed that he's been doing so many. And what people were saying that they liked about Bridgerton is that they felt like Shonda took her time. This is her first one out of her Netflix deal, and that she took her time and gave us some quality, is what some people are saying. But the scuttlebutt is around the water cooler. Is that too many metaphors about talking?
I was just like, no, for me, you know, I'm glad it's out there too.
I'm rooting for it. I am Tyra Banks rooting for it. Like, I am here for it. Like,
for you.
We're all rooting for you. People were rooting for this, and the Malcolm and Marie on Netflix, starring Zendaya and John David Washington. I just finished Euphoria. It was like so phenomenal.
I haven't seen it, but I do love her. I could show you. I've got her an Essence magazine with her on it right here.
Okay, looking at that. And so, you know, I'm trying to absorb as much Black content as possible. I watched Malcolm and Marie on Netflix. It was shot during the pandemic, and it was supposed to get all this sort of Oscar buzz, and it's been kind of, people really do not like this movie. Like, people do not like it, and it just made me think there's something else I was watching, and then I don't look at Rotten Tomatoes until like after I watch a movie, because I don't want to be influenced by other people's opinions. There's something else I watched recently, and I'm just like, damn, like, y'all did not like this. Like, sometimes can we just let art be art? Like, or
true.
You know, people check
these things for the opinion. So I saw it advertised, and I was like, I'm glad they're doing something. I didn't know about the background of it, of like, it was to keep them acting during the pandemic, which is interesting, right? But I was like, I don't think it's going to be what I want, even though I love both of these actors, and I'm glad it's out. And, you know, I just think, especially in our conversations, because you're always convincing me, you're like, it's Black, you know, either created or acted. And so it's like, support it. But I'm like, I think we've gotten to the point where we can diversify even in what we watch. And I just felt like they're going to take me through it, and I'm not going to like it.
There is actually plenty. I'm not twisting your arm to watch it, because I understand. I also, when people when people say I don't like it, I get it. Like, I understand when people are like, I did not like this movie. I understand it. When someone says we shot this during the pandemic in like, you know, 2 days, I'm like, I get that. It's the thing that I watch. Like, so after I finished watching the movie, I didn't realize it was written and directed by a white guy. And then I had some pause and I had some thoughts, because the language and some of the issues that they talk about come from such like a Black voice. The things that, you know, John David Washington's character is this writer director in Hollywood who just wrote his first film, and they talk about like racism and opinions in Hollywood, and like the journey of Black people in Hollywood. And so it was so interesting, because I would have never guessed that it was from a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did think that like sometimes there was a lot of just yelling, then like a couple just yelling. I was like, oh, this is gonna be just, you know, almost 2 hours of like a couple like
Oh
yelling.
yeah.
And so the rhythms of it are like, oh, now we're arguing about this, now we're arguing about this. All takes place in one night. It's a very interesting concept. A lot of the shots, it's done in black and white. I think it's too cool for school in some ways.
Yes.
Like it thinks it's
seemed
doing like
so,
all these
like stylistic and
Yes.
beautiful. But
it
also
looks
like shout out.
it looks like a summer project that some like, you know, talented
Art
folks got
student did.
together, like, and I really believe like some talented people were looking for something to do during the pandemic, and they got
were.
together. And
And do more of that though. You know, it's
Yeah.
like whether you liked it or not, like you could do more of that. You know.
Yeah,
authors.
and I think there should be more space for like indie projects like this, like there was in the '90s. And I'm glad that Netflix exists. That like I think there was some great, as an actor watching other actors, I'm like there's some good moments and stuff like that. I also get when people are like, I didn't like this movie. I'm like, this is not the hill I'm gonna die on. Like I'm
Totally.
like, okay, I got it there.
You saying that they're fighting, that's when I was like, no, because I'm like, I don't need to watch it.
You don't want to see that, especially like during the pandemic. Like nobody, you don't need to see this. Yeah, but I'm here for, you know, Zendaya, and people are like, oh, but it is weird to see her playing an adult because she plays nothing but a high schooler all the time, and not that like she's like trying to transition out of that, because she's got Spider-Man 3 coming up, she's got season 2 of Euphoria, so she's still gonna be playing like, you know, high schoolers. So
she's 20, like 24, 25, isn't she?
Don't need to know. Fantasy.
Fantasy.
She does it so well, though.
She's an adult, though, because I've heard men just be like, because, you know, she's like sexy, especially, you know, in that role. And so it's confusing where it's like, it conjures up lust or whatever, but it's like, is she a teenager? You know, it's kind of like.
It is hard. Oh, and the guy who wrote and directed it. The guy who wrote and directed it is the showrunner of Euphoria. So that's where she got linked, that he wrote this for the two of them. And it kind of addresses the age difference or whatnot. But she is playing an adult, former drug addict, similar to her character in Euphoria. So,
nice. Yeah.
Well, watch it. Don't watch it. Doesn't matter to me. I could not care less. Last thing before we go, the impeachment is happening, and I'm not, you know, I was the last season of impeachment. I was glued to every like news source and I need to keep all the updates. I don't have the bandwidth for it really this time. I don't have the faith in the current Trumpican party. I miss the Republicans of old. I don't mind debating issues. I'm not one of those. I'm a very progressive liberal Democrat. Come to the table, Republicans. Let's have a debate. Let's talk about the issues, right? Like let's do it. But we're not in a space where we can even come to a table, because I'm at a table and they're on a spaceship. And
yes, indeed. It is so true. So it's like, protect your peace. I mean, it needs to be at this stage, but yeah, doing the blow by blow, it's like,
I can't. Yeah, just let me know when it happens, because also because I was so hurt by the results of the last one. I will never forget. Like the fact that they wouldn't even let witnesses be called at the Senate, the first one, right? The Senate was like, no witnesses. We don't, like, what? Like it just was so like, we're not even gonna at least pretend to go through, so it's at least on record. So, but I do want to say this. I found this a very interesting fact. 56% of Americans want a conviction, and 58% want Trump to be barred from ever holding office again. And I thought that was such an interesting fact, because that's the majority. And last time I checked, majority rules. And it just was such another painstaking point of like how broken the system is that like Republicans have not had the will of the majority for decades.
For so long.
For decades. If you look at it, they have not had the will of the majority for decades. They've lost the popular vote, and because of gerrymandering, they've been able to get more Republicans into the Senate and into the House. And so it's very frustrating, because it's like the system we already know is broken, but just to reiterate, it's fucking broken because the will of the people can't get through.
But that is how the system was built, so it's actually working as designed.
So we need to fix this. We need to break it. So we need to break the system?
Yeah.
What are we doing? But
No, but I mean, when people talk about dismantling, it used to sound so extreme, but now I'm like, oh, I get it, because what has been built is to function in a certain way, and it's not serving the people, you know? And so we need some amending and some dismantling and reimagining across the board.
Well, funny you should say that, because It's Black, we need some inspiration for this, right?
Okay,
because
yeah.
we need to find our own strength and, just realize that each and every one of us is going to be the future of who they will be talking about on the different history months. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and get some inspiration. It's Black History Month, and we're going to look at this dynamic duo of Babs. I'm calling them Babs, some badass bitches. Yesterday.
Sure your ancestors are thrilled.
Oh, they are having a hoot. They are having a ball. They're having a hoot nanny over that. We're going to talk about some OG Babs, Mary Church Tyrell, and Ida B. Wells, badass bitches.
Folks are like, I did not know those were the names that we're going to call.
Take two. All right, y'all, saddle up, because we go into these two badasses, aka these Babs, badass bitches, Mary Church Tyrell and Ida B. Wells. You know what they really were? The Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B of their time. They were doing.
There too?
They are they are some activists in this house, y'all. There's some activists in this house. They with their own woke ass politics. See, we go
I was almost gonna have to hop off board with you. I was gearing up for a soul clap, and then I was like, oh wait, okay.
Oh man, I think they'd be so down for this. They'd be like, yeah, James, tell the story. Tell them. Okay, so we're gonna start off with Mary Church Tyrell, and we were talking about. I said a few weeks ago when Aneki was here, I was like, put a pin in it, because we were talking about Chocolate City, Washington D.C., and about the Black aristocracy that was created, and Mary Church Tyrell was a huge part of Chocolate City being created. You can never just say Chocolate City; it's got to be Chocolate City. All right. Early days for Mary Church Tyrell. So she was born Mary Eliza Church Tyrell, September 23rd, 1863 in Memphis. Now, 1863, not a great time. Well, Civil War, slavery, all right in that time period, right? So, woof, like that, yeah. So she was a daughter of former slaves. Her parents were incredibly dope. So her dad, Robert Reed Church, was a successful businessman, and he became one of the South's first Black millionaires. So I need to check this, though, when I want to check the data of the timeline of like when he became a millionaire, and then when self-made, what's her name? Oh
Madam
my
C.J.
God.
Walker.
Yes, and when Madam C.J. Walker became the first millionaire. So I'm not sure. They were around in that same time period. So when the millions were being made.
Yes.
Her mother, Louisa Ayres Church, owned a hair salon. So like, I mean, this is pretty amazing. Like, her parents came out of slavery and were like, we found some boots. Don't take these away. We're going to pull ourselves up. Yeah, I couldn't imagine. I just always think about, what is that day?
Don't you?
When you're there, like, you're free now. Like, wait, I don't even,
But this is what we're made of, but we'll get to that.
Okay, all right. Okay, put a pin in it. We'll get to that. So her parents were super big on education. She went to Antioch College in Ohio, went to Oberlin College as well, got her bachelor's and master's degree. And then eventually she was like, I'm off to DC. Something's calling me there. I'm going to DC. And she taught at the M Street Colored High School in DC in 1887. It was a really big deal. That school is legendary for just the folks that ended up coming out of there. And she met her boo in 1891, Robert Herberton Tyrell. You love a good boo, because you just you peeked up when I said boo.
I love a good boo.
You know what? Already I'm like, Shonda, you should be writing this, like, fuck Bridgerton. This would be already a much more interesting show.
I'm here to
okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So she met her boo, and he was also a teacher, but he would eventually go on to become Washington D.C.'s first black municipal judge. So that's who Mary Church Terrell was like surrounding herself with, right? Like, this is what we're doing. And again, there's like DC, there's just like the movers and shakers. You know, if you go back to our Chocolate City episode, there was just like this just black aristocracy of folks who were just doing stuff. It didn't even need to have like political power. They had their own power within their own community and what they were able to do. People would flock to DC because it was like the best of the southern cities. It rivaled, you know, Harlem in itself. So let's get to some of her activism. So she was not one to sit on the sidelines. She was like, I got things to do. Mom and dad were slaves. I got to do some shit. Like, they showed me how it's done.
But it's incredible that it's like the first generation, you know,
that's
just like,
true.
you know, and it's like, this is what they did with that, you know?
Which is why if you're like, how come my mama looking at me like that? Because look what Mary Church Terrell did, okay?
It's true.
So y'all, again, this is this is our ancestors. This is what is inside of us. So in 1892, she was really activism lit into her veins, because in 1892, her friend Thomas Moss was lynched in Memphis by white folks because his business had competed with theirs.
It's like,
I thought this was capitalism. I thought, no, are we, for you. Oh, I got it. You all can have capitalism, right?
Right.
That's okay. And so, I mean, and two, like her focus was like lynchings. And if you think about it, like, I mean, that was in itself an activism cause, a branch. So like, there's so many different things to write, but like, what are you fighting for? Oh, I'm fighting for the right to vote. Oh, I'm fighting for lynchings to stop.
Isn't that something?
Like, that's
my friend, my personal friend.
I have a connection to this, and we need to
was literally minding his business.
Literally minding his business, excelling at it. And so how to take up a cause. And like, I also too, even for the folks of like, it's a lot of like, it's the fact that that's a lane that someone had to choose to stop and bring attention to, like just that one area. So she joined Ida B. Wells. We'll get to her. See, Babs, badass bitches, shutting it down. Yes.
Ava could do it.
Sign them up. Yes, let's go. Here we go. Watch. A year from now, there's going to be a new show called Babs, and it's going to be this. Our ideas, every time we're like, oh, this should be a movie, boom, it happens. See? So... But Tyrell, she was focused on racial uplift. That her whole entire approach too was that not only was she trying to like stopping the lynchings, but she also was like, if blacks could help and black folks could help end racial discrimination by advancing themselves and other members of the race through education, work, and community activism. So she was kind of also going in for this Oprah approach, right? Like, I'm gonna help y'all be better people, like so you can have for yourself the same way, because that's what her parents did. They were like, all right, I gotta lift myself out of this, and so that was ingrained into her. So she was like, let me help y'all.
One, teach one.
That was her. You know what? And so she had a strategy based on equal opportunities, and her belief was that if one succeeds, the whole race would be elevated. And I think that is
agree.
So. It's such a fact, because you hear that to this day within the community, right? Like, that's why, like, if when Beyonce succeeds, we feel like we all succeed, but like, but that's the thing, is our community is so connected that if one goes down, we all feel that. I'm still feeling the effects of Bill Cosby. It's really hard. It's challenging, right? Like, OJ Simpson goes to, great.
I was like, just to name one, but then you went and named, I was like, yeah.
And it's hard, because here's the thing, we don't like to talk. It's very hard for us to talk, because like,
it's not nothing, or it's not him over there. We feel it in the network of our community.
All white people are not tripping about the shenanigans of Army Hammer right now, right? They're just like, oh, that's just Army Hammer. Oh, I guess he was a fool. But they're not like, oh, this is a reflection upon us as the community. Right. They don't have that same feeling.
But it's the same with the, killings, the police shootings and everything. We feel it, and it's compounds each time, it's not nothing, or it's not an isolated incident. We feel it.
Because we know how close that it could be to us. When I hear the story of Breonna Taylor, I am like, that was me when the cops came bursting into my apartment. It was so triggering for me to hear that story because I was like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me. I was just in my apartment, and that could have been me, you know?
Yes, yes. And what was terrifying about that is you already knew that, you know, without the example that then came years later. That train's never late.
So Mary Church Tyrell wasn't just about, she was multifaceted because, again, intersectionality, right? She is a Black woman. She's not just trying to get civil rights. She's also trying to, like, let her live her life as a woman. So women's suffrage, she was all about it. She was really focused on securing the right to vote. That's where her focus was. So, I mean, just all these different layers of focus. She was like, education, stopping lynching. Women got to be able to have the right to vote, too.
A lot of ground to cover.
And so women's suffrage was, for her essential to elevating the status of Black women and thus the whole race. Because she was like, okay, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. Let's make sure that if we're good, then everybody else is also going to be good. And
ain't that the story?
Yep. And so she would campaign for Black women's suffrage. She picketed the Woodrow Wilson White House with members of the National Women's Party because he needed to know. He needed to know what was up.
He needed to know.
I think he was a little too nice to the KKK. So she was all about the women's suffrage. But you know what? This will not surprise you, I'm sure. Guess who wasn't too excited about her being all up in women's suffrage? White ladies, white women were not. They were reluctant.
Like
I don't know, but yet they were okay with she was making progress and doing work. They're like, oh yeah, that's great, but can you or don't you have to be so loud about it? Like, can we chant a little lower? So they were reluctant to include Black women in any of the struggles and stuff that they were talking about. Interesting enough, when I was doing my research, that little tidbit about so I went to womenshistory.org and they left out this little tidbit that white women were really mean to her, to Mary Church Tyrell, and we're not about the cause. I think that was very interesting erasure that was happening about, because you hear this stuff about women's suffrage and all this sort of stuff, but there's a movie that I will not watch because it is starring all these very talented white women, Meryl Streep, other British white lady, all these women. I won't see it because I know that it's not telling the full story of women's suffrage.
Yeah.
Happens all the time in movements, gay liberation. They were trying to out, intersectionality as well. It's annoying to say the least. So she was like, again, nobody sits Mary Church Tyrell on the sidelines.
Yeah.
She's not going to do it. She's not about it. She's always going to be in the arena. Let's go, Brene Brown. So she started the National Association of Colored Women in 1896. And she had, her motto was lifting as we climb. And her words became the motto of the National Association of Colored Women. So I love that. It's like, here we are, we're lifting each other as we climb here. And she was the president from 1869 to 1901. And she campaigned nonstop to Black organizations, mainstream, white audiences, just getting the word out there. She was doing writing. She was just doing the work. She was speaking. She was doing all just kinds of stuff and working to advance social educational reforms. She fought for not only women's suffrage, but civil rights because for her, she belonged to the only group in this country that has two such obstacles to surmount, both sex and race. So she, can't pick one lane. She gotta drive down both these lanes at the same time. And then, for the NAACP, W. Du Bois was, he was like, you all have to make her a charter member. Like, she helped us start this organization. Like, you have to do it. So she became one of the founders and later became the first Black woman appointed to the school board and served on a committee that investigated alleged police mistreatment of Black folks. Wow. Sounds like she would still have work to do today, unfortunately. Like, she would still be on that board.
She's also an honorary member of Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. You be knowing. Yeah. You're like, oh, we know her. This is what she said. We got you, sis.
That's our girl. Yeah.
And then after, post the 19th Amendment, when she was like, whoo, that's done, on to... Next on her list of things to do was to dismantle Jim Crow. So she went to work on that. Like, what a to-do list, right? Ooh, 19th Amendment, get the women the right to vote. Check. Great. Now let's handle this Jim Crow. Like, busy. So went to work on that. 1940, she published her autobiography, A Colored Woman in a White World.
Oh, I should. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like one. Yeah. 1948, first black member of the American Association of University of Women after winning an anti-discrimination lawsuit, because in 1950, at 86, she is refused service by a whites-only restaurant. And this is like...
And I tell you, she was like, you guess what we're not going to do after my lifetime?
No, 86 years old. You know what she's done? Where she's come from? In DC, Chocolate City,
was like,
where she built. So she was like, hell no. She protested, sued them, and in 1953 won the Supreme Court ruled that segregated eating facilities were unconstitutional. This was a major breakthrough in civil rights. It laid down the groundwork for Brown v. Board of Education. Yes.
Wow. I just feel like the more you know, Star needs to like fly across our faces.
Oh man. And then about 4 years later, she passed away at Highland Beach, Maryland, but a life well lived.
Well, Queen, thank you for all that you have done for us.
But let's kick it over to her friend, her sister friend, Ida B. Wells Barnett, not to be outdone, also doing the work.
Not to be outdone. I love that.
Miss Ida B. Wells, journalist, activist, and researcher of the late 19th and early 20th century. She was born in Holy Springs, Mississippi, July 16th, 1862. So they're about a year apart. She was born, but the difference is that she was born into slavery during the Civil War. And the Wells family, her family, as well as the rest of the enslaved people in her, and the Confederate States were then decreed by the Union thanks to the Emancipation Proclamation about 6 months after her birth.
Wow.
Right. So she was born into slavery. Her sister friend was not. Like, whoop, dodge that. But like she was born and then was freed, but woof.
Yes, yeah.
So post-Civil War, similar upbringing. Her parents were like, all right, we're turning this beat around. They became active members of the Republican Party, a different kind of Republican Party than what we got now. And so they became active in the Republican Party in Reconstruction era politics because they were like, okay, we're not going to let this shit happen again. Like, we got to be involved in this politics because these white people can go crazy. So her parents were all about education, just like her friends. Her dad was involved in the Freedmen's Aid Society and helped start the Shaw University, which turned into Rusk College, which that's where she actually went to school. She was expelled from Rusk College, probably because she was just too brilliant of a mind,
Tale as old as time.
But then in 1878, tragedy hit when she was 16 years old. She went to go visit her grandma, but yellow fever had broken out and killed her infant sibling, and her parents. So she was left to care for her brother and her sister.
Oh, wow.
16 years old. Like a 90s
That's
sitcom.
Like on the macro and the micro. I know.
Like here we go.
Familial strife, societal strife. They got these pandemics that they're dealing with. You see?
A lot of stuff. Yeah, a lot of yep. And so she was like, all right, well, I'm Ida B. Wells, so I got to get to work. So
you know what she said? She said,
I'm Ida B. Wells, y'all. Let's go. I'm not going to let my sister friend outdo me, okay? I see you, Mary. I see you, Mary Church. Mary. Oh, Jack Kay could play her, and then she can go, Mary. She can play Ida B. Wells. So she convinced a county school administrator to let her teach. She was like, let me teach like this class. And they allowed her to have a job and keep the family together. She eventually moved to Memphis. And I'm like, girl, get out of the South. Go to D.C. Come on.
City's calling.
Chocolate City, it's calling. So she eventually became a journalist and an activist. She was writing about issues of race politics in the South. She went underneath the moniker Iola. It was just like safer for her to do that way because the work that she was writing. But she became the owner of Memphis Free Speech and Headlight, and later Free Speech. So what really spawned her into activism was in 1884, there was a lawsuit. She filed suit against a train company in Memphis because she was thrown off of a first class train, even though she had a ticket, but they were like, you gotta get out of here. She was like, I bought my ticket. And she refused. And they forcibly removed her off the train, which also reminded me of those black women who were thrown off of a wine train in Napa, but they fucked with the wrong black woman because she was like, I'm a lawyer, so I'm
you're gonna feel this heat.
You're gonna feel it, because they were too some badass bitches. So
you're gonna find them around every corner. You need to quit.
You go catch the heat.
I just love how they're going up against the law. Like, no. Even though a generation ago there were no rights, folks weren't considered human or fully human, and so it's like the audacity, and just like the resilience to be like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yes. I bought this ticket. I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna write about this. I'm gonna do my journalist thing.
I'm gonna use an alias. I'm gonna get it out there. But we know so much about like psychology and mindset. It's like, imagine the mindset to be like, I know that my grandparent was owned and I myself was even born into slavery, but you're not going to kick me off of this train. I belong here, and I'm taking it to the law that I know doesn't support me, but you're going to hear my voice.
You're going to hear it.
Incredible.
So she won her lawsuit at the circuit court, $500, but at the Tennessee Supreme Court, they overturned it, which, whatever. But she was like, whatever. So she got to writing, and while working as a journalist and a publisher, she taught at a segregated school in Memphis, and she became a huge critic of the conditions of Black-only schools. She was fired from that job after that. They were like, oh, you're speaking out, Ida, you can't be saying these things.
Too much attention over here, but you got to.
So then here's where it's literally like our Avengers team up begins. So then her friend Thomas Moss, you might remember, was lynched.
Thomas.
That was her friend. Her friend too. They both were friends with Thomas Moss.
Thomas was a homie too.
Yes, and she was like, "Okay, no, we got to do something about this." So that's when her and Mary Church Tyrell, they linked up and they were like, okay, we got to do something about this white mob violence, because that's what it was. White mob violence. You know what? We still got some white mob violence today.
We've seen it. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay.
And so she was skeptical about these reasons Black men kept getting lynched, because people, it was almost like, oh, well, they had done something wrong. And she was like, okay, all right, let me go do some investigation down here. Okay. So she went to go investigate several cases for months, and she would publish her findings in pamphlets, which pamphlets were like the Twitter of the day. You wanted to get something out, you got it in a pamphlet, and people would like, that's this little small little thing. I can fold it up, get the information. These little, you got to be, concise, little sound bites. That's how you get the word out. Put in a pamphlet. She wrote several columns in local newspapers. She did an expose in 1892, which enraged white locals who burned her press. So that, her press that she owned.
Wow.
Burned it down. Drove her out of Memphis. Luckily, she was up at NYC at the time. She was like, "What? What happened?" Okay,
is my voice over there? Because I'm in Enterprise, so.
Of course, she was away on business. Like, y'all forgot she's a badass bitch. Like, she's not home. She's doing investigative journalism and, grilling somebody about something.
Yeah, getting the truth.
Yes. So she was, she wrote on lynchings in depth for the New York Age, African-American newspaper, which was run by former enslaved T. Thomas Fortune. And then in 1863, she wrote a Red Record, which was a personal examination of lynchings in America. So that's a nice little one to pin.
Yeah.
And then
I could handle a Red Record.
Yeah. And then in 1893, she helped organize the boycott of the World's Colombian Exposition, because they weren't going to allow any Black exhibitors. So she was like, nope, that's not.
No, that doesn't sound right. So I'm gonna say something.
She put a pamphlet out called "The Reason Why the Colored American Is Not in the World's Colombian Exposition." Circulated that.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Frederick Douglass. See?
See?
He funded it.
Okay.
They were all friends. And she was joined by many other Black leaders in this boycott as well. And again, just, and then in 1895, she married a famous African-American lawyer named Ferdinand Barnett, had 4 kids, also a lawyer. So her and her sister friend
we're not playing.
Shonda Rhimes, I want to see this show. This is the show. You're right. This is the show I want to see.
Yeah, this is the show.
This is way more interesting. And she was a mother, activist, just doing all
Pretty
stuff.
Sure she's a Delta too. Just saying.
Yes.
Kamala Harris, aka, it's all good.
It's all the same. It's all the same. Yeah. Skiwi. All right, let's go. She traveled internationally spreading the gospel of America's fucked upness. She was like, y'all need to know about these lynchings that are happening. Because if you also think about it, I'm pretty sure lynchings were not happening in other parts. Like, it was lynchings are pretty much an American pastime, like a really gross, like, American pastime that, like, you're literally murdering people.
That's not tongue in cheek. It actually was a pastime, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and it was because people would, like, have a picnic. They would, like, it was a little a sport. The murder of a human being, a murder of a human being, and the spectatorness of it. In supposedly this modern day society, right? This free world, okay? So she, like her friend, openly confronted white women's suffrage movement who ignored lynching. So she also was coming at it. She was like, listen, white ladies, hello, lynching. They were like, we don't, I don't know. Maybe they did something. Ambiguous. Maybe he whistled. I don't know. I crossed the street. I get nervous. Right. Ooh. So they didn't take too much of a liking to her, but she was like, fuck it. I'm here for women's rights too, bitch. So maybe that's me playing Ida B. Wells.
Well, you're gonna have to cite Jackie Harris for it. Like, either you or Jackie.
Maybe I'll play the younger version, and she could play like the older one. So she was the founder of the National Association of the Colored Women's Club, which her friend became president of later on. Mary Tyrell did. See this? Yeah. And so she addressed issues of civil rights and women's suffrage as well. She was there at Niagara Falls in the founding of the NAACP, but she wasn't mentioned as a founder, though people were like, but she should be a founder. She was there. So some articles call her a founder, some don't, because she wasn't an official founder, but she is like, in posts, they've been like, yeah, but she was there, you know.
She was there for the founding. So what does that mean?
Yeah, right, exactly. Like W. Du Bois was there, Archibald Grimke, Mary White Ovington. They all were there. So she later left the NAACP because she was like, y'all are lacking some initiatives. Y'all are not doing enough work. So she left. Dang. And she continued working on behalf of all women. And as part of her work in the National Equal Rights League, she called for President Woodrow Wilson, still acting a fool, to put an end to discriminatory hiring practices for government jobs. And then in 1898, brought her anti-lynching campaign to the White House, leading a protest calling for President William McKinley to make reforms. So she was constantly going to the White House, being like,
"Dang!"
And this is before the timeline before. But and then in 1930, she made an unsuccessful bid for the Illinois State Senate because they weren't ready. Wow. They weren't ready, but she crawled so that folks like, Stacey Abrams and Barbara Lee and Val Demings and Vice President Kamala Harris can fly. So laying down that.
Thank you for your
So she died
work.
at the age of 68 in 1931. Her friend lives, almost a good 20 years longer than her, but kidney disease. But she did a lot. Ida B.
I think it's so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like, I've done enough. You all take it from here. It's like,
go for it.
Best.
So there it is. Your Black History Month Babs themselves. Mary Church Terrell, Ida B. Wells, 2 historic badass bitches. Now we're going to kick it over to Jen's Corner to help us capture our
integrate all this information.
yeah, because it's a lot. That was a lot. So
It
but
was a
what do
lot.
we do now? How do we, it's almost so daunting. Like how can I be a badass bitch? Like I don't know if there's enough badass bitch energy, or like how do I step into
Hmm.
my own magic?
Yeah, I mean, there is such a, especially in it, and I just feel like permission, especially it is Black History Month, so it's talking
Mm-hmm.
to the Black folks listening. Everyone can listen, right? But just creating a stage, and don't we have that experience where it's like, we've been told we have to be 100%, 120% better just to be
uh
created equal. Like that's what we
yes,
were raised with, but now we see because of the
you have to work
generation that
twice as
came
hard to get
before.
half as much.
Yeah, like what kind of story, as far as the not enough story goes, and just when you hear about the historic leaps and bounds, of course it is so inspiring, but it also feels like, what do I, or now that there have been leaps made, undeniably you'll be in like corporate, or you even have just like friends of all different backgrounds saying like, racism's over, sexism's over, there's no
Mm-hmm.
what intersectionality, what, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? It can be a lot, it can be exhausting. So I wanted to talk about how my Black brothers and sisters, people, folks, all of us, how to uncover our magic, right? Just in time for Black History Month. And what I said was, this is a conversation on how to stay sane, at peace, well rested, motivated, hydrated, and moisturized during the craziest time of our lives. And if
Yes.
you've been feeling down from all the violence, hypocrisy, and the performative action, a lot that's happening this month, right? It can feel
Mm-hmm.
exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm just going to talk to y'all about really mindsets and like things to remember and take on and consider as you move through this month. Because some stuff can be triggering, especially since everyone's kind of like in the woke Olympics now. You're like, it can be a lot if you're Black right now.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Yes. And well, and sometimes I feel like, and maybe sometimes like this is what I take on, where I'm like, I have to carry the shot put for this round. Oh, and I got to play in that event too. Or because companies are like
Mm-hmm.
creating space, they're like, well, here's space, like talk about Black
Totally.
history. And like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'll talk about
Or it's
Black
like, oh, okay,
history.
we're listening now, and you're like, I don't have my PhD in this yet. I just thought I wanted to just enjoy my Wednesday. And it's like, nope. So here's some things to keep in mind, how to really capture your magic that you know that you
Mm,
have. So the first thing is, remember, keep in mind that you were made to overcome, right? And so what that really is about is, slavery is horrific, was horrific. It is such a historic, stain. And yet, the people like we're just talking about who came out of that were truly the survival of the strongest mind, body, spirit. Even on the disgusting side, where our ancestors were selected, right, for certain qualities. And so we are the descendants of that. We're the
mm,
descendants of the people who, at one minute, were told that they were property, and the next minute were millionaires on their, by their bootstraps. And we come from the people who, the minute they got an advancement, they would burn their stuff down, hang, all that kind of stuff. And yet we continue to go on. And so that is what's in your DNA. And that's not what's celebrated. That's not what's mentioned. And so just know that the cells and the DNA and everything that makes you who you are, as you sit here listening to this right now, like, you are made to overcome. That's your makeup. And so we're having that too, where we're in a pandemic and there are people
mm.
getting shot and they're scaling the wall of the Capitol, and like, it can feel like, what's the point, or like, we'll never make it out of this, or it's always going to be this way. And yet you are made of the stuff that overcomes, right? So take heart and keep that in mind. And it's not, of course, I love like a woo and a mindset, but it's science, it is historic, and it's really true. So whether it's from microaggressions from a coworker or doom scrolling got you down, just know that you are made to overcome. So that's the M.
Oof, I want to sit in that. Like, it's in my DNA.
It
Like, and
is.
we come from the survivors, the people who survived like the last pandemic, or the last, or
Correct.
Reconstruction, or the slavery and the capture and coming over on boats. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and that wasn't written, the folks that brought our ancestors over, they weren't like, yay, we hope you make it. We hope you make strides. Everything against, like you said, old boy had a store. He was minding his business, doing well, burned down the minute an advancement was made, right?
Yeah.
So just know that if you feel like everything's up against you, that doesn't even matter because you will overcome. You're made to overcome, just like those who came before us. So
it's in the songs. We shall overcome.
We shall. It's historic. So know that, and just know again that when you're consuming certain things, that's not the message that's out there. That's not what we're fed, right? So you have to feed yourself that capital T truth, because it is the truth, right? And you just outlined it. Those are just two aspects of examples of how powerful what we come from, right? So that's where I source my self-esteem, where it's like truly getting like, now come on, like you come from overcomers, like you're made to overcome. And that's magic. It's just magic. It's like, wow. Who does
Black
that?
people truly are magic. Like they're not kidding when they say, black girl magic, black folk magic. Like it is real.
Black folk magic. Exactly. So this is how I'm underscoring how to claim that. Now, the A of the magic, right, is allow for ease and rest, because this comes up so much. And this is really what got me through last season, with Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. I was like, I'm not educating. I'm not taking up any labor, basically. It's like I am traumatized, triggered. I'm tired. I'm exhausted, battling depression. Like I'm not. And so it's a gift to be able to, not a gift, but it's like, it is your right. And it is your time to take a break, right? Because the thing is, what's happening is all of a sudden folks are like, okay, no, I'm listening. Okay, now I'm willing to learn. And that's great for them. But again, in honor of Black History Month, I'm telling you, Black folks, that if you want, you get to take a nap. There's a, I don't know if it's a whole company, but there's an Instagram account called the Nap Ministry, where just the name alone, I was like, permission granted, thank you, right? but they're kind of campaigning for like people of color, Black folks, like you don't have to do everything anymore. It's time for other folks to take up arms and do the work.
I feel like, is this my intervention? I feel like, are we even on the podcast? I feel like you are just having a heart to heart with me. Those don't even record. Okay. This one is really hard for me. And I think because sometimes I think about like, that movie Harriet really changed my life. I just always think about Harriet Tubman and just like what she went through, and I'm just like, and sometimes I'm like thinking like today I was like feeling just so low, and I didn't have like a specific thing to point it at. Before it was easy, it was like the insurrection or the election or the other thing that Trump tweeted, and I didn't have like a specific thing to like pinpoint it to. And then you read that tweet to me, and it was like, what was that tweet about like why do I feel so depressed or something?
Yeah, it's like, why do I feel anxiety and depression right now? She muttered to herself as a global pandemic raged on for another year, upending her entire life. It's like we judge it, or we're like, what's going on? Because even it's almost, I mean, the beauty of all this mayhem that's gone on is it is waking people up. It's like undeniably now we've got these phones that are showing that police are killing innocent Black lives, are showing that Black bodies aren't mattering the same as others. It's not something we said. You can see it. That is just what's out there. Or the pandemic has put us in a scenario where we all have to listen and we all have to watch. And that's been the benefit. But it's become kind of our new normal, but it's not normal. So if you're not feeling good, that makes a whole bunch of sense.
And it's really difficult because I feel like it's been so normalized for everybody, just like the pandemic and all these different things. And it's just like, but yeah, like a lot of people died today. It's still, and it's just like, but yeah, we're all supposed to just keep going on, like keep playing checkers or keep, doing the job and like being grateful that, we have the job. And of course, which I absolutely am, but like,
this is why allow for ease and rest. You have to, only because it also is coming at a detriment. Like you can, for the sake of push through, but what happens, like you're not resilient, your mental capacity suffers, your wellness suffers. And I feel like those who came before us didn't suffer so that we, like, you know
Oh,
what I mean?
okay.
It's like
Yeah.
they're paving a way so that we can thrive. And so rest, because you're going to be better for it. You're going to research, you're going to be energized, you're going to be inspired. And that's our task. And it's also, it's time, and for what it is, because a lot of times it is folks who haven't done the work, who all of a sudden want you to give them Cliff's notes. And it's like, no, that's not your job. And it's re-triggering, it's re-traumatizing, and it's exhausting. And you don't have to do it, to exist with these. So this is the thing, because what I was starting to say was the pandemic and all these things that have happened have been like exclamation points and explosions. But to exist with the low hum of oppression and the low hum of
Oh,
sexism
right.
and the
But it's
low hum
always
of,
there.
always there. So when you're saying like I could point to this tweet and I could point to the election, and it's even the feeling of having to say like, well, I gotta have a reason. It's like, no, you're, a Black man in America, that you've got a reason,
Yeah, black gay man in
gay,
America. Add
yeah.
that in. Oof.
Yeah, I was gonna say your location. I don't know if you're revealing, but it's like,
A black
yeah,
gay man in the Bay Area. Like,
yeah. Because then it's
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be progressive, but then it's not, and so it's like, what are you complaining
Oh
about?
my
Like all
God.
that, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Because I also I was watching, not to detract too much, and if our editor wants to edit this out, she will, because that's what
'Cause
Sarah
that's what
Brown
she
don't mess around. And because I just said it, she's like, cut. But I watched the movie The White Tiger,
I
produced by
haven't watched
Ava
that yet.
DuVernay. Super
Okay.
great, super good. I know it's not Black History Month, but it is it's people of color doing, but it's so interesting because it made me realize what a direct caste system that they have in India. And we have one here in the US, but it's a little bit more invisible. But when you watch The White Tiger, it's like it was one of those movies I'm like, okay, I don't have anything to complain about. You watch a movie where you sometimes you're like, I guess I don't have anything to complain about. And not that you don't, but it puts things in perspective.
It does,
You
for
know,
sure.
and so
Yeah.
definitely how I was like, okay, I can go to this job that I don't go and call anybody master there. I'm not, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's benefit when things are called out. There's like direct oppression, but it's also where it's like, I mean, we're all equal, but if it's like not true, it
yeah.
also feels like it doesn't give voice to what is, and so it can also be difficult when there are still those master dynamics, or somebody thinks there's a master dynamic when there really isn't. That's also
Army
challenging.
Hammer. Sorry, I
So
keep breaking up.
totally.
Hey, we have to feel feelings because Kanye said some stuff. White people, what y'all got to say about Army Hammer? What y'all
I
got to
don't
say?
think anything. I think we already covered that. It's not the same vibe.
Fair,
It's just
yes.
not. You're like fair, yes.
They were like, we don't. He's just a
That
guy.
fool
I
over
don't
there.
know.
That's what. Oh God, what is her name? Dr. Boyce. And she's like, they'll just be like that fool over there. That ain't me. Where there's like the my people fight that we,
Yes. Ugh.
which is why allow for ease and rest. And
Okay.
we weren't trained to do that, but it's time, because we're going to all be broken. And then what? Because there's another side that is very energized and down for the takedown. So
Oh,
and
that's
it's,
true.
and just like how you were saying, how the bad bees were linking arms, we're always collective. We're a powerful collective, and when you're needing to rest, I'm feeling strong, and if I can rest when you're feeling strong, that's how you keep a movement going, right? And it just sets a new precedence. When do we get to rest as a people, right? So I'm calling for, and many folks are calling for, that we allow ease and rest, and really in the case of not having to be the educator, not having to be the one who's like, it's okay, even though that totally spun you out and ruined your day. Like, no, you don't have to make it okay. It's like, that
Yeah.
hurt, that was inappropriate, I need you to do your work. That's what's allowed now. So because we feel like we again have to be the best. We have to have a PhD in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and actually that's its own profession, its own deep study. And you need to find it, because also our experience has been, as we went through grade school and went through high school and went through college, we learned the curriculum, and then we had to educate ourselves on our own history, right? So I get that people are like, I've got kids and I'm Zoom and I don't have time to read these books, but we've been doing it our whole lives. Like, that's what it is to be Black in America. So that's what time it is. You got to do both, because that's what
Yep.
that the only reason why we know the answer is because we had to look into it.
Yeah.
Because just like you were saying about something, but we're all raised in this, the water, you can't ask
Mm-hmm.
a fish what does water feel like. We're all raised to say that, if you're black, get back, gay's not right,
Right.
and all. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're all raised with that idea, and so we've broken away on our own. So if you don't believe
Mm-hmm.
that, then you got to do the research to find out where the
Mm-hmm.
flaws are, as we have. So are
Mm-hmm.
you on board, James? Are you going to allow ease and rest?
Yes, I am. I'm gonna try. I'm trying. It's so hard. I struggle with this one. My therapist and I've been
It's a
talking about it. My therapist asked, like, "What do I do for play?" And my head exploded. And I said in and I said in a mastermind, I'm gonna try to schedule 1 hour of play a week. And they were like, "What? 1 hour a week?" I'm like, I
or
don't.
rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I try. I'm trying to do at least 7 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah. How's that going?
Trying. Is
Okay.
this my intervention? What's the next letter?
It's G. Well, because I just want you in your magic. We need
I'm
you. We need
trying.
you.
I
Yeah, that's all
know.
you can do. Just allow. That's why it's A. It's like allow it.
Okay.
It's
Allow.
like allow
Yes.
it. And yeah, you
Okay.
don't have to. There's anything that is rooted in like fodder for you to beat yourself up. It's like we're not about it. So don't make yourself wrong on any of these. Okay. G is grow your sense of confidence, right? So the same way it feels like we're in a never-ending nightmare with no end in sight. We have the pandemic, we have racism, we have social injustice of all kinds, and we have examples of people, who are keen to perpetuate the old ways, right? Which feels really exhausting. So again, looking into history, um, you know, there's also, in the same way that there's those, like having to be anti-lynching, which seems crazy, but
It really is.
it's, and we can't wait for what is happening now to be, people in the future to be like, that's crazy that they were up against that. It's like, yes, that's what we're treading, right?
Mhm.
But again, just grow the confidence of, this is where I was talking about, like, we shall overcome, and again, shout out to Black History Month. There's so many, people of color and immigrants all have a story of overcoming, but just shouting out, the Black folks for Black History Month, that we overcome, and we overcome with style, we overcome with joy. When you talk about incorporating play, like, you see, like, I don't know, videos of, Black folks dancing, having a good time, being so dressed and suited. It's like, who told you, it's like all that confidence, and so to draw on that again, because there were pandemics going on, there were lynchings going on, there were, one generation removed from slavery, and yet we see these examples. And so again, like,
Mm.
grow your sense of confidence in that, because again, it's not just
Mm.
Pollyanna wish, it's true.
Right.
It's historically evident, right?
It's like when a coworker, I was needing to confront a
Mm-hmm.
higher up about um just an overstepping of boundaries of trying to be an ally but doing it not in the right way. And I need to have a very difficult conversation, or
Mm.
I chose to have it. I was in the process of choosing to have that difficult conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
was going to pass it out to someone in, people ops, HR. But then I connected to one of my Black colleagues, and they told me to stand in my power pose and communicate to the ancestors and see what they'll tell me what to do. I didn't even have to do it because I just visualized me in that talking to, Ida B. Wells or Mary
Mm-hmm.
Judge Strout or Harriet Tubman, and they were like, "Go be a bab, go, go be a bab, go be a badass bitch and handle
Yeah,
your business."
totally. Because no matter the outcome, like in all the examples of your stories that you shared, it's just the using your voice, that
Mm-hmm.
you can draw your confidence from. And I love the imagery that you said too, because this is where I draw my confidence and grow my confidence, is actually seeing yourself surrounded by your ancestors, because that power is there from way back to just
Mm,
like our grands, right? Our
yeah.
grandparents.
It's like that Maya Angelou quote, "I come as one, but I stand as 10,000 or something.
Oh,
Or,
yes. And don't
uh,
we need it, right?
yeah.
So hashtag Black Joy, like, don't be afraid of it, lean into it. I just watched a documentary called United Skates because I just got skates to
Ooh.
lean into my play. I'm like, I'm
Okay.
gonna get on, and there's like a whole history, which you always find. It's like, God, there's always a history. But there's this whole thing, not to digress, but it's like it was a whole thing where it's like they had a black skate nights, like black
I
people can
I
go.
knew this was gonna go into like
Yeah.
there's some sort of black
But then
something with it.
it was so crazy though, even like the Bloods and the Crips, like skating rinks would be their neutral ground where they like wouldn't be, so
Oh
everybody could skate.
shit.
Crazy. Or like Queen
Oh.
Latifah and so many artists, since of course they couldn't perform everywhere, black artists got their start at skate rinks. Like it's like, oh, there's always such a rich history. But the thing is, they're trying to shut it down, trying to shut black folks down, but then they're like skating, they're doing like leaps and splits and dancing in style, and it's just like so much black joy. And that's where it's like that's also what we're made of, it's
Mm.
not just the drudgery, it's not, we do song, we do dance, we do joy, we do laughter, we're funny and witty. And so again, it's like grow in your confidence of that, because that is our nature, right?
You can't help but grow, yeah, into that. And like it's so I when I rewatched the movie Glory
Mm-hmm.
recently, and one of the comments is that like the black soldiers who were there, about the 54th regiment of black
Mm-hmm.
soldiers who fought in Civil War, and Matthew Broderick's character comments that like, oh wow, like I've never seen such joy. Like they would do the training during the day and then at night be like hanging and having a good time because they've known how to switch and make sure to find that joy in those moments of
Mm-hmm.
when they could. So, and definitely check out Glory, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and the guy that I
Wow.
thought was Dwayne from A Different World, but
Uh-huh.
actually Andrew Bauer.
Oh,
I thought
really?
it. I always thought it was Dwayne from the Real World in it,
I
and it's not.
No,
It's
from
he's
a different world.
from a different world. Yeah. Andrew Brower is the guy that I just realized this
Shout
as
out.
an adult rewatching. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's not that. Because as a kid, I saw a black guy with glasses on TV, and I just assumed it was
Dwayne
Dwayne
Wayne
from, yeah, but
in a
no, it
different
was a
world.
different guy. Didn't
Who
look
knew?
alike at
Well,
all.
also United Skates, it's like it's such a it's a history lesson that you didn't even know you were going to get. And it's
Mm,
like we overcome. It's like from the lynchings to just trying to skate and have a good night. It's like all the time. But then at the same time, it's like we overcome, and we do it joyfully and with style and epically. It's incredible. So growing that confidence, right?
mm,
It's just keeping the legacy going. So
mm.
this is magic, like this is the magic formula. It's how to find your
Yeah.
magic through it all. So the I of it all is identify examples of what you want to experience, right? So this is one of my manifestation and like coaching techniques is really, finding evidence or finding examples of what you want. So it's the same thing. And of course, you already did such a beautiful job of outlining where it's like, well, I want to have my own business, or I want to overcome, or I'm feeling down, depressed. Everything looks like it's going up in flames. What do I do? Read someone's biography. For this, I was like, just have for Black History Month, go back to the old school and do a book report of one or two people's autobiography, because you will see the
Mm.
overcoming of it all. So my two that I've chosen are Madam C.J. Walker and Cicely
Ooh.
Tyson, which her
Oh.
audiobook is 16 hours. I was like,
I was
absolutely.
Yes, I was actually, you know what? It's I bought it. I ordered it. So
I
I'm
did too.
still I have it. I have still 3 more hours after Barack Obama. That was 28 hours. So
Oh,
I
really? The
looking forward to
Audacity
a
of Hope or what?
no, his latest one. I
Oh,
forget.
okay.
I am Barack. Let me tell you what I
Mm.
did as the president. I don't know. His new
Mm.
one. And it's only part 1. Anyways,
Ooh.
but you know what? It's so interesting because what he'll do is he'll like to tell you about how he handled this one conflict. He actually tells you the whole entire history of how that conflict, because he's got to
Oh,
give you
I love that.
context. And so he
Yeah.
takes you in this huge. And at first I'm like, I get lost in this history. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, then I was gonna have to deal with this issue in Yemen. And here's the history of what happened in Yemen. Da, 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 how Republicans did it and they fucked it
But
up and
he
da, da,
has
da.
to know
And
that.
then he brings us back to where he was having to make a decision, which is so great because I'm like, oh, it gives it so much more context. So, anyways, I have
That's
Cicely queued
incredible.
up. At first I was like, I hope she's doing the audio and Viola Davis, I think.
Viola does the forward.
Oh, okay, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
But it's just
okay,
fierce.
I'm here for it. Cicely
Yeah.
Tyson, all the snaps.
Totally. Just, yeah. God rest her soul. Thank you for the work
She
and
refused to
representation.
play anything that was not uplifting Black people. She was like, not
Mm-mm,
gonna be no
mm-mm,
not
mm-mm.
playing that.
We love it. So find examples. Even Oprah is always the ubiquitous example of just even how to be like wealthy and use your wealth for good,
Love
but
her podcast. I can't recommend it enough.
see, so that's for Black history is definitely find 2 autobiographies of anyone you can find, because now the way has been paved. And if you're feeling despaired, read these autobiographies. It could be modern or it could be back in the day, because it's always about overcoming. You will find these tenets of overcoming, of confidence, of joy, of community, right? And so we're just in that now, in the present day. And of course, they were going through all these feelings. It's like there's a pandemic going on, and there's violence, and I'm in real danger, and I worry about my family. All of that. That's all that they're contending with, and we are today. So, just finding those examples. My funny kind of example is even when I was like done with men, I was like, you know what? I'm dating in my 20s and they're terrible. I'm just not going to date. I'm not doing relationships. But then I was like, let me find examples of good guys, And so that's what I sought out. And of course, that's when I met my husband, who was my friend for a very long time. But it was cool because I was like, these group of guys were just good dudes. And I needed to see that example truly. And so there's different places in your life that you can do that, because you'll start seeing either bad actors or bad behavior, or in various ways, and you can start thinking like, this is my worldview now. So the way to turn that around is to find examples of what you want, identify those examples. And so for Black History Month, I say, do your book report. Since a lot of us listening are adults, pick 2 books. You can do it.
Oh, you could do one you read and one you listen to.
One you listen to, totally, yeah. Two figures, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I can do it, because you come from these people and they did it. You can do it too, because we got Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube and Google, so we can do it. We can do it. If they did it, we can do it. And then the C of magic is to celebrate Black history every month, because I sometimes get triggered February 1st when everyone's like, Black History Month. I'll be like, you know what though? Don't try it. Don't try to 1/12 us, because that sounds a little too familiar and I'm not here for it. No fractions. Every month, keep that same energy. Tell a friend.
Yes. Because Black history is American history, and that's really like what we just have to break that down. But definitely having a month, I think this is so great to focus and renew your vows and commitment to the cause. That's what it really is. It's like renewing it. It's almost like Black New Year, really. What is celebrating Black New Year and renewing the vows and the commitment to it, and letting it continue,
letting it being a true celebration.
Yes, absolutely. A celebration, a deep dive understanding. Because, and I said this too with, my Black history, for everybody to dive into Black history, which is, American history, because then you'll know, people are like, what do I do? What can I do? Well, this is the first start, is you go do the work, go educate yourself, and then you'll know what your role is. You'll know whether it is, okay, I'm a seamstress and I'm going to sew some Black Lives Matter curtains or something, and post them up, or I'm a potter and I'm going to do some pottery or something, or, and I'm going to go talk to that coworker because what, he said that one thing and I think that I'm going to step up, or I'm going to,
we have that trust between us and I think we can have that conversation.
Yeah. Because you'll be moved if you arm yourself with knowledge and also understanding. When you hear all these stories, you won't let your Uncle Waldo say such frivolous things at the dinner table, because you now know the dangers of what happens when you let Aunt Walina go off the rails. Waldo and Walina be the worst, don't they?
Yeah, they be the worst. They be the worst. But
vaccinate your kids,
so,
Walina.
February, Black History Month, go deep, love it, and also be sure to just celebrate Black History Month every month. Observe, right? Yes. Recognize, but this is the month. But
so let's go over the magic again. Okay. So it's
you're made to overcome. Keep in mind, you're made to overcome.
Made to overcome. Allow for rest.
Yep, ease and rest.
Ease and rest.
It's G next. I literally looking at You were.
Grow. I'm looking at the letters right now,
God, I
too.
didn't know. I was like, it's hard to hold it in your head. And then you
Nope,
revealed
looking
it.
at it. But you know what? I'm looking at the letters and I looked at the wrong letter. I was like, I was looking at just the I. G. This is not helpful for the listeners at all. They're like, we got it, James. G. Grow into your confidence.
Yeah.
I. Investigate
Identify
everything.
examples.
Identify examples. I'm gonna need a note card. C. Celebrate all year long.
Yeah, celebrate Black History every month.
And that's how you become a magic bab.
No, totally. It's how to uncover your magic just in time for Black History Month. But you know,
Boom,
like,
boom,
these are permissions and these are mindsets and these are things that are in us. So it's just leaning into your nature already. But again, society's not going to celebrate this and draw this out of you. So
you have to create. That's what magic is. Magic is creating. You have got to boop a boop and gun.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I love it. So I hope that helps. And I just hope, you know, when on those days it feels daunting, that you can tap into this magic piece and get it going on.
Black magic.